Have you seen the video of the Ukrainian woman who approaches the Russian soldier and begins to harangue him? If you haven't, you got to check it out before you listen to today's podcast. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, first, let me just say I spend a lot of time thinking about recovery, in particular, helping men recover from porn addiction, struggles around porn, unmanageable behaviors, however you want to describe it. So a lot of my days are spent thinking about recovery. So it's probably not surprising that I see parallels to and metaphors and recovery ideas from all sorts of unlikely angles or unlikely sources. And like many of you, this is beginning of March 2022. I've been horrified by obviously the invasion of Ukraine and what's going on in terms of the invasion and the bombing of Kyiv and Kharkiv, I think it's called, and a number of other cities, and just what's happening in Ukraine. And been watching probably a little too much news, like some of you. And I guess, and I do this at great peril, because some of you would say, well, how can you use an example from the horrific suffering that people are happening and make any other teaching or learning example from it? I guess that's just the way I'm wired, and in no way am I meaning to make light of, the geopolitical realities that are happening in the world. So hopefully this doesn't offend you that I would use a difficult situation to make another point. But at that risk, let me just talk a little bit, first of all, about that video. And the video has this older Ukrainian woman who approaches this Russian soldier, and in very colorful, obscene language, she tells him to go home. And she basically says, why are you here? What are you doing? And then at some point, she offers him sunflower seeds. You go, well, what's that about? She says, here, take these sunflower seeds. That way, when you die here and we put your body in the ground, then maybe the seeds will sprout and something good will come out of your occupation. Boy, how incredibly ballsy of this woman. It's just an example, first of all, of the sort of spirit that you see as people rise up against what has been just this outside, this oppression, this occupation that is underway. And I want to just speak, it's interesting, this whole idea of resistance to something that is killing us, resistance to something that seeks to take over our life, in this situation, our country. There's something heroic about resistance. I think of Premier Zelensky or President Zelensky basically deciding to stay in Kyiv. Apparently the Americans had offered to evacuate him, and his response was, I need ammunition. I don't need a ride. And putting his life on the line. Got people now traveling to Ukraine to fight on behalf of the Ukrainians. Men and women who are staying to fight. I mean, we're talking, I saw today on the news, it was like a 60 kilometer, that would be like a 35, 40 mile a long line convoy of armored vehicles and tanks that are heading towards Kyiv, the capital. There's something heroic about resistance. There's something heroic about standing up to something which is which is seeking to bully you, to steal your lunch money. And I have just been, so blown away by the human spirit to push back, to stand up, to fight back. And I want to just say something to all of you out there that are seeking to stand up to the invasion of porn in your life. Again, forgive me for the parallels here, but I think you're heroic. I think if you're a wife and you're listening to this, I think your boyfriend, your husband is heroic for attempting to stand up to what has pushed him around, for bullied him for a chunk of his life. It's not easy. It costs. It takes sacrifice. And to say, I am going to forego my pleasures because this is costing me too much, does take real courage. I wonder, and sometimes people say to me, I've been working with you, Vern, in recovery, or I've been in a group and we've been seeking to do this and I'm 6 months in, or, I'm still occasionally looking at porn, or I haven't broken the habit yet. And I'm just going, and I'm asking, they're asking themselves, well, what difference is this making? I'm discouraged. It's like this thing is too big for me. The convoys are heading towards my city. I'm just going like what is, what's the progress here? And I sometimes come at it this way and I ask, well, ask yourself this: what is the alternative? Is it simply putting up a white flag? Is it simply opening up the borders of your life and simply saying, come on in, take over, whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, I'm simply going to say yes. I'm going to capitulate to all of your demands that you're making on my life, the porn industry is making on my life, what it wants. Is that the alternative? Because you've already found that manageability is not possible. You can't just say, well, I'm going to do a little bit, because, the classic example of, why do you not let a camel's nose under the corner of your tent? Because once it gets its nose in there, then it just keeps pushing more and more of its body into your tent. Right? They keep, with Putin, you give him, you can't just say, well, we'll just give you this part of the country, because then he'll take the next part of the country. He'll take the next part of the country. And porn has taken the next part of your life. It will just take more and more and more. So I say to people, okay, so you are not where you want to be. Has there been progress? And the answer is, yeah, there has been progress in different areas of my life and different responses I have. I say, okay, well, let's start with that. Let's continue to build on the progress, the successes that you're experiencing. Let's continue to work on the processes of recovery. One of the things we do oftentimes in our groups is we'll start with a check-in. We'll talk about our feelings. We'll talk about some of the positive actions we're taking in our recovery. We'll talk about where we're at in our sobriety, and then we'll talk about upcoming threats. And we'll do that. But sometimes the only downside of that is guys get way too fixated sometimes on simply their report, their slip report, or and that's important. It's important that men learn to be honest and they don't hide and they don't deflect and all the things we learned over the previous part of our lives. But I say to people, the bigger aspect here is the process. What are you doing in terms of building recovery, building health into your life? If you make as much you put as much emphasis on the process of recovery as you do on the results, the results will, in one sense, begin to follow. They will begin to take care of itself. So that's just some of the things I do in encouraging guys. For me, sometimes I have to be pretty stark in my encouragement to say, okay, well, what's the alternative? As long as you're in this group, as long as you are focused on defeating this thing, pushing this thing back in your life, you're resisting. Your resistance, and your resistance is holding those forces at bay in your life, those forces that seek to destroy everything that you hold as dear and valuable. The respect of your kids, the love of your wife, the circle of friends that you have. All of that is threatened. So what's the alternative? To resist, even though in some places it's not going to be a perfect, it's not going to go perfectly. So there is something heroic about resistance. And I guess I've just been really thinking about that as I watch the events on the news and see just incredibly heroic attempts to push back evil in terms of what's going on right now. The second thing I listen to, again, I get inspiration from a lot of my recovery buddies. And I listened this morning as I was out for my walk in the pouring rain. Welcome to the Northwest or Southwest BC or Southeast BC here. But I was out for my walk and I listened to one of my buddies who is Jonathan Daugherty from Pure Sex Radio. And he was talking a little bit, him and his co-host were talking about thoughts. And somewhere along the line, they one of them made the analogy that thoughts are like seeds. And that's kind of where I had the kernel, get the play there, the kernel for the idea to talk about this Russian woman who was this Ukrainian woman who was offering this Russian soldier seeds that it could at least sprout when he dies and was thrown in the ground. And the whole idea that they were talking about is that our thoughts are like seeds. We all have thoughts that happen. A couple days ago, my wife was up at night. She was throwing up. She was not doing well, and so she the next day she was just totally wasted. So she was up in the bedroom all day. Didn't come down till about 3:00, and I'm down here. Just thinking. And I had all sorts of thoughts just because she wasn't in, it was a different situation. And all of the remote controls were out and it was just this sense of vulnerability. Something was different. And it was just this idea that all of these potential seeds were being offered to me. Well, I know enough about seeds. Unless you add something to a seed, it won't germinate, right? You've got to put seeds, I think, maybe there's some biological seeds that don't need this, I don't know, but seeds need to be put in the ground. Seeds need to be nurtured. And I think some of those arousal thoughts that we often have throughout our day or our week are just like seeds. My buddy Matt Dobschutz talks about arousal thoughts. And he talks about, are we turning towards or away from arousal? And I think that's the way he put it anyways. And I like, this whole idea of I think Jonathan used the idea of, what did he call it? Thought recovery. And so when I have a thought, my immediate idea is, okay, I can take that thought. If you're familiar with a scriptural passage, it talks about taking a thought captive. So as soon as I have a thought, I can either bring dirt to it and I can I can cover that seed in dirt and I can add some water to it and a little bit of sunlight. And before you know it, within a little bit of time, that thought will grow into the beginnings of an action. Or I can take that thought and I can take it captive, or I can completely counteract it with a opposite thought, or I can smother it, or I can do something to usher it out of my life. The key is to recognize it immediate. Oh, there it is. There's that seed. There's that seed. It's happening to me, and it's just popping up in my mind. I should do this. I should do this. Hey, that thing, I wonder if that device is still open. Hey, I sometimes liken it to, it seems sometimes that I have this backroom committee in my life. There's some room in my mind that is like a committee of evil brainstormers, and they're all sitting around a big round table, and they're going, hey, what kind of thoughts can we throw at Vern today? And they write down a thought, and they hand it to a runner, and he goes running out to me and says, hey, Vern, why don't you try this one, or you should do this. And I look at that thought, and I crumple it up, or I say not likely, or I hopefully respond by turning away from it, or by countervailing it, or by doing something. And so the runner just runs back to that back room and says he didn't buy that one. And the committee says, no, it's fine, we'll come up with another one. And they just sometimes, now it doesn't happen every day, but sometimes it feels like it goes on all day. Other times I go days without that committee seeming to be operating at all. But thoughts just have that power if we turn towards them. Now, I've been doing a lot of memorization recently, where I'm memorizing truth to counteract those thoughts. So as soon as I start thinking about something, I start going through some of the passages and things that I've memorized that simply take my mind and my thoughts elsewhere. Thoughts are like seeds. And so I don't know where you get your motivation from. I don't know what inspires you. But I look for bits of inspiration every day, to keep me focused. I find inspiration, as you probably noticed from this podcast, in sometimes the most unlikeliest of sources. And that's one of the reasons why every day I get up and I go for a walk in the sunshine or the rain, usually 5-6 days a week, and I put a podcast on. A recovery podcast. I've got about 7 or 8 of my buddies that usually by the time it's done, they've inspired me to keep resisting. So here's to resistance. Here's to your heroic resistance. And here's to the people of Ukraine. God bless.